All right, so we were working on factoring trinomials. Tri means there are three terms. A term is anything that is separated by a plus or a minus sign. So this is three terms. We're going to factor the three terms into just two binomials that you multiply together. So x squared plus 6x plus 8, for example, becomes x plus 2 times x plus 4, and we're just practicing how we got that answer, okay? Also, when you have a trinomial, you can call it ax squared plus bx plus c or x squared plus bx plus c, so that you know when we say b, we mean our middle term. When we say c, we mean our constant. So that is how we started this one, 5.6. All right. These we found two factors for 30. 30 is 3 times 10. 10 added to 3 makes 13. So that's how you know you have the correct answer. 3 times 8 does equal 24, and 3 plus 8 does equal 11. So that's how you know that this is correct. You can also use the FOIL method to re-multiply it out. Here we found that there were no factors of the number 35 that also added to a positive 2. 35 plus 1 is 36, 7 plus 5 is 12. So those are not, that is not a trinomial that you can turn into two binomials multiplied together. So you call it prime. It's in its simple form. All right, so we are on to x squared minus 6x plus 10. If you're arriving late, the only update you missed is that I've moved the exam from a Monday to a Wednesday so that we have time for all of this, and I'm not going to go past 5.6 today. We're not going to go on to 5.7. We're just stretching everything out for the second time for this unit. All right, same thing here. A is 1, B is -6, and C is 10. According to this, right? Ax squared plus bx plus c. What we're looking for are numbers that multiply to c and add to b. So in this case, we need it to multiply to equal 10 and add to equal a -6. So this is a good example of you have a positive number you're multiplying to get, but you have a negative number that when you add the numbers. So you need two numbers that when they're multiplied, they're positive, but when they're added, they're negative. So if we think about that, then we're only going to include the negative factors of 10. Does that make sense? So if we just use the positive factors, 10 times 1, 10 plus 1 is 11. Two positive numbers are never going to give us a negative when we add them. So instead, we want to say -10 times -1 is a factor pair. Then we get -11. So if you know you're adding to a negative number, multiplying to a positive, you want both your terms negative. Negative. So that was a -1. How about -2? If I take 10 and divide it by -2, I get a -5, right? 5 plus 2 is just a -7. Can I take 10 and divide it by 3? No. Can I take 10 and divide it by 4? No. Can I take 10 and divide it by 5? Yes, but I get 2. So those are all of our negative factor pairs of 10. There were only 2 of them. Neither of them added to a -6. So again, you can just call this prime. The second note you missed is that you can turn in anything in this unit, any homework in this unit or quiz in this unit, you can turn in up until the date of the exam. So if you're behind, if you missed something, go ahead and go back. You should be able to open it. All right. Example 2 is not only ax squared plus bx plus c, but we're also going to practice factoring out a greatest common factor. Okay, so if possible, factor out a GCF. So here we have 3m squared minus 24m minus 60. It just so happens that you can take 3m squared and divide it by 3. You can take -24 divided by 3, and you can take -60 and divided by 3. All of those are divisible by 3. So this can become 3 times m squared, because 3m squared divided by 3 is m squared. Negative 24 divided by 3, you can just put it into your calculator, is a negative 8. Keep that m, because there's no m you're dividing it by. And then 60, because it's a negative divided by a positive, I know it's going to be negative, but what is negative 60 divided by 3? It is a negative 20. Good. So before you start looking for what can you multiply to get negative 60 and what can you add to get negative 24, I would look at all three terms and make sure there's nothing you can take out. No greatest common factor you can take out first, because this makes the math a lot easier, right? Instead of 60 and 24, I have the numbers 20 and 8. A little bit easier to manage. Good. So now what you want to do is you want to find two whole numbers whose product is negative 20 and whose sum is negative 8, right? We need it to multiply to equal C, add to equal B. Multiply to equal negative 20, add to equal negative 8. So this is an interesting situation. Previously, this was positive, this was negative. So we took the terms that were a negative times a negative, right? Because if you add them, you get a negative, but if you multiply them, you get a positive. Here, though, you're multiplying to get a negative. So if you want to multiply to get a negative, you need to do a positive times a negative, right? Because a positive times a positive, we know is always positive. A negative times a negative is always negative. Not true. Positive. But to get a negative, you need a positive times a negative, okay? So those are the only factor pairs we're looking for. Positive 20 times a negative 1 gives us the negative 20 we're looking for, okay? So for example, we'll start with 1. Negative 1 times a positive 20, right? There's also the opposite pairing of positive 1, negative 20, okay? Because 20 minus 1 is 19. However, negative 20 plus 1 is a negative 19. So we need to include both of those because those give different sums when we add them together. So there's our first factor pair with the sign switched. Then we can take 20 and divide it by 2. So negative 20 divided by negative 2 is a positive 10. Then we can switch the signs, positive 2, negative 10, right? 10 minus 2 is a positive 8. Negative 10 plus 2 is a negative 8. So we're looking for it to add to negative 8. So we found it with negative 10, positive 2. You can keep going if you want to just list them all out first before you start adding them. We did 1, we did 2. You can't divide 20 by 3. You can divide 20 by 4, right? You get negative 4, positive 5, or positive 4, negative 5, right? But those would be the number 1 and the number negative 1. So those are our factor pairs that we're working with. The only one that adds up, the only one that adds up to B is negative 10, positive 2. So what we want to do, it's very important that you remember to keep the 3 on the outside, okay? 3 times, and then you make it into 2 binomials. Good. So 3 times m squared factors to m times m, just like x squared factored to x times x. Now it's m squared, so we're going to call it m times m. We have a positive 2 and a negative 10, right out of space. So I didn't write that very well. 3 times m plus 2 times m minus 10, which is the same as 3 times parentheses m plus 2, m minus 10. So those parentheses, you can lose them. 3 times that, or that times 3. Does not matter. That doesn't change it. Good. Just make sure you don't forget to bring down the 3, and you can check it, right? So if we check it, we're going according to PEMDAS, which starts with parentheses, so we'll do the inside numbers first. M times M is M squared. M times a negative 10 is a negative 10M. 2 times M is a positive 2M. Positive 2 times a negative 10 is a negative 20. But all of that is still being multiplied by 3. Combine these two, you get M squared minus 8M minus 20 times 3. And then you're just going to distribute that 3. So take that 3, becomes 3M squared. Take that 3 by a negative 8, it's a negative 24M. And then take that 3 times a negative 20. 3 times a negative 2 is a negative 6 with a 0 at the end. And you end up with your same trinomial. Our answer is 3 times M plus 2 times M minus 10. Doesn't matter the order, you can flip these, doesn't change what you have. All right. We learned factoring by grouping in I think it was Friday, right? Factoring by grouping, we practiced on Friday. Now you're going to see how it relates to this, okay? So step 1 is factor out the greatest common factor, which is what we did here, okay? If there's 1 except 1, all right? It's because you can always divide anything by 1. It doesn't change anything, so that's not factoring anything out. Good. For the resulting trinomial ax squared plus bx plus c, find 2 numbers whose product is, instead of just c now, we have a times c. So up here it was just the c, just the negative 20. Now it's going to be a times c. Let me give you... All right, back to this original example, x squared plus 6x plus 8. What do we know? We know a is 1, b is 6, and c is 8, right? We want it to multiply to equal c, so that means multiply to equal 8. Another way to think of it is we want it to multiply to equal a times c. However, in the case that there is no number in front of the x squared, that's just 1. So you're multiplying it to equal 1 times 8, right? So it's not really multiply to equal c, it's multiply to equal a times c. It's just that oftentimes a is 1, so we just think that as c. So it's adding a step, making it much more complicated, but you can see how we have been doing that the whole time. We have been making this equal to a times c. We've just had every example where a is 1. 1x squared plus 6x plus 8. 1x squared plus 13x plus 30. 1x squared plus 11x plus 24. Good. So instead of times multiplied to equal c, it's multiplied to equal c times a. It's just 30 times 1. Multiply to equal 24 times 1. Multiply to equal 10 times 1. Okay, so we're adding a step because instead of c, now it's c times a. Okay, but the sum is still b. And then we replace the middle term using the factors found in step 2 and factoring by grouping. Don't worry, we're going to practice that now. All right, this says factor 25x squared plus 20x plus 4. Remember that you want to factor out a greatest common factor, 25, 20, and 4. Unfortunately, right? If it was just 20 and 4, we could divide it by 4. If it was 25 and 20, we could divide it by 5, but it doesn't have a common factor for 25 and 20 and 4. So there is nothing to factor out. We want to find the factor. Oh. All right, we want to find the factors of a times c, right? What is a? A is 25. times, what is C? 4. We want it to multiply to equal 25 times 4. What is 25 times 4? Think about it. 25 is a quarter. What does 4 quarters give you? 100 cents or $1. So we want it to multiply to equal 100. And we want it to add to equal 20. What are the factors of 100? All positive. So we have 1 and 100. We have 2 and 50. Think about adding these together and getting 20. Okay, we're not close yet. 100, can you divide it by 3? No. Can you divide it by 4? Yes, you get 4 and 25, right? Can you divide 100 by 5? Yeah, you can get 5 and 20. We're getting closer. Can you divide 100 by 6? I don't know. Let's try it. Can you divide it by 7? Can you divide it by 8? Can you divide it by 9? What about by 10? Yes, we know that, right? 100 divided by 10. Oops. 100 divided by 10 is 10. So 10 times 10 is 100. 10 plus 10 is 20. So our factors are 10 and 10. What you want to do, this is very complicated. So they factor out the greatest common factor. There was not a greatest common factor. For the resulting trinomial ax squared plus bx plus c, find two numbers whose product is a times c. A times c was 100. We found the two numbers. They are 10 and 10, right? Replace bx, okay? So you have bx right here. We're going to replace bx using those two factors. Let's write what we had before. What we had was 25x squared plus 20x plus 4. Replace the middle. So this is bx. Bx is the number and the x. Okay. This is ax squared. This is bx. This is c. It says replace the middle term using the factors found in step 2. My factors were 10 and 10. So instead of 20x, I'm saying, I know this is very complicated, but we are going to practice it. That 20x becomes, instead of a plus 20x, it becomes plus 10x plus 10x. Okay, that's what it means. Replace the middle term by using the factors found in step 2. The factors were 10. Add the variable behind them. So you're replacing this b of 20 with the two terms you factored it into. You said 100 divided by 10 is 10, and that 10 plus 10 is 20. So 10x plus 10x is 20x. And then you keep the 25x squared, and you keep the 4. Okay? So that's what we've done right here. Nope. Sorry, it's on the other side of my paper. 25x squared plus 10x plus 10x plus 4. Or rewrite it. 25x squared plus 10x plus 10x plus 4. Good. Now we're going to practice factoring by grouping, because I can't factor anything out of this, but 25x squared plus 10x, I can factor out a 5x, right? 25 divided by 5 is 5. X squared divided by x is 5x. Ooh, sorry. That's that 5x. 25x squared divided by 5x is 5x. 10x divided by 5x is just 2, right? So that's half of my factor by grouping. Then we're going to look at plus 10x. So I'm going to put a plus 10x and 4. I can divide them both by 2, right? 10x divided by 2. Oh, sorry, forgot the 2. 10x divided by 2 is 5x. 4 divided by 2 is a positive 2. Good. Now my common factor is 5x plus 2. So I'm going to take that 5x plus 2 and multiply it by 5x plus 2. Good. So 25x squared minus plus 20x plus 4 becomes 5x plus 2 times 5x plus 2. Now let's look at, we're going to do the exact same thing for 21x squared minus 41x plus 10, okay? Is there a greatest common factor? 21, 41, and 10. There is not. So let's multiply. So first we did the greatest common factor. There was none. Then we're going to multiply A times C. In this case, A is 21, C is 10. 21 times 10 is 210. So it needs to multiply to equal 210. And it needs to add to equal negative 41. Right? All right. So let's think about these are a positive and a positive multiplied together to get a positive. So we have a positive when we're multiplying, but a negative when we're adding. That means both the terms are going to be negative, right? Negative 1 times a negative 210. Negative 2 times, what do we know? 210 divided by 2 is 105. So when you have a negative 2, negative 105. 210 divided by 3. And this is how I do it if I don't know. If it's not a number I'm familiar with. 210 divided by 3 is 70. Negative 3, negative 70. That's not going to add to negative 41. 210 divided by 4. 210 divided by 5. 42 and 5. Getting close. All right. 42 and 5 is kind of close to 41. 210 divided by 6 is 35. If I add 35 and 6, what do I get? Negative 35 plus negative 6, negative 41. So I know it looks daunting when the numbers get really big, but this will work. Start with 1, divide your number by 1, divided by 2, divided by 3, divided by 4, divided by 5, divided by 6, okay? And then add as you go until you get to your B. So what we have is, remember, you keep the two outside terms, 21x squared and 10. Inside, you're now going to call the negative 41x a negative 6x and a negative 35x. Good? So if you think about it, negative 6 and a negative 35 add to 41. So we're just splitting up that negative 41 to two different terms. Then we're going to factor by grouping. Again, it doesn't matter if you put the 6 first or the 35 first. You'll end up with the same answer. 21 and 6. Can I take 21 and divide it by 6? No. Can I take 21 and divide it by 3? Yeah. Can I take 6 and divide it by 3? Yes. So take the factors of 6, which are just 6 and 3, and see if either of them can be multiplied to equal 21. So the factors of 6 are 1 and 6, 3 and 2, right? Check which of those you can multiply to get 21. And then we have an x squared and an x, so we can also factor out 1x. So we have a 3x. 21x squared divided by 3, we said 21 divided by 3 is 7. X squared divided by x is just x. Negative 6 divided by 3, 6 divided by 3 is a 2. X divided by x leaves you with no x's. Okay? On the other side, we have negative 35x plus 10. Remember, the most important and confusing, or most likely to make, for me to make a mistake with factoring by grouping is to not carry that sign straight down. So we have a negative 35x plus 10. You can divide both of those by 5, right? Negative 35 divided by a, because that's a minus, we're going to say it's a negative 5. 35 divided by 5 is a positive. Negative divided by negative is a positive 7. X. And then positive 10 divided by negative 5 is a negative 2. Now you can check. You can see that 7x minus 2 is common to both. So we can pull out the 7x minus 2, and we can multiply it by 3x minus 5. So we have done, it's been a big change, but basically, here you're working with trinomials where the a is 1. Okay, so those were our first 4 examples. The a is 1. Here we factored out a 3 so that the a was still 1. And now the big change here is the a is no longer 1. So you multiply a times c, list your factors, find the one that works. Instead of calling those, so it's no longer x plus 10, x plus 10. That's not what we're doing when we find the factors when it's a times c. It's ax squared plus 10x plus 10x plus c, right? So we're keeping our a and our c, and instead of doing anything like this, we're putting those down as a replacement for the b. So that's what happens if your a is not 1. Okay? I know it's a lot. Example, we'll keep going. Example 4. 3x squared minus 7x plus 6. So, is there a greatest common factor between the numbers 3, 7, and 6? There's not, right? So, what you want to do is multiply a times c. It needs to multiply to equal a times c. So it's going to multiply to equal 3 times a positive 6. 3 times 6 is 18, right? 3 times 6 is 18. And it needs to add to equal b. Those rules don't change. B is a negative 7. Don't forget the negative sign, okay? So we're trying to find factors of 18 that will add to negative 7. If this is positive and this is negative, that means all your factors need to be negative. 18 divided by negative 1 is a negative 18. 18 divided by negative 2 is, it's okay if you need to use your calculator. I just had to use my calculator for this one, right? 18 divided by negative 3 is what? Negative 6, right? Oh, thank you. You too. Good. Do any of those add up to a negative 7? Those are all, right? Negative 4. I can't divide 18 by a negative 4, right? 18 divided by 4. 18 divided by 5. 18 divided by 6. And I'm already back around, right? So there are not any more. I've checked every number I could. That becomes negative 19. That becomes negative 11. And that becomes negative 9. So when I add them. So what do? We just call it prime. You're done. There's no way to factor this. It is a prime. Okay. Next example. 6x squared y squared minus 2xy squared minus 60y squared. Remember your first rule. Factor out a greatest common factor. X squared, y squared, xy squared, y squared. That means I can factor out a y squared, right? I'll get rid of it there, I'll get rid of it there, and I'll get rid of it there. I can also factor out, my biggest number is a 2. I can factor out a 2. 6 divided by 2 is going to be 3. Negative 2 divided by 2 is just going to be a negative 1. Negative 60 divided by 2 is going to be a negative 30. So this all changes to 2y squared times 6 times 2 is 3. X squared. Y squared times y squared makes the y's disappear. Negative 2 times a positive 2 is a negative 1. X The y squared divided by the y squared cancels it out. On to the next one. Negative 60 divided by 2 is a negative 30. I'm switching between pointing at this 2 or this 2. They're the same. Y squared divided by y squared cancels out the y's. So this all becomes 3x squared minus x minus 30. Okay? We factored out the greatest common factor. Now we're going to ignore this part. We're just going to carry it down with us, but it's not part of our factoring anymore. Okay? Instead, we need to multiply a times c. That is now 3 times a negative 30. 3 times negative 30 is a negative 90 because negative 3 times 3 is a negative 9, and then bring down the 0. And it needs to add to equal. It just says negative x. That's actually a negative 1. Okay, so can you find two terms that multiply to equal 90, but add to equal a negative 1? If it's a negative and a negative, then we know we only want our negative positive pairs. So like negative 1, positive 90, positive 1, negative 90, right? But we need them very close together so that when there's only one term between them when we subtract them. 90 divided by 2 is 45. 90 divided by 3 we know is 30, right? 90 divided by 4. Okay, check them. 90 divided by 5 is going to be 18. 90 divided by 6 is 15. We're getting closer, right? 90 divided by 7. 90 divided by 8. 90 divided by 9 is 10. So we have negative 9, positive 10, or positive 9, negative 10, right? Which one of those is going to add to a negative 1? These two, right? Negative 10 plus 9 is a negative 1. So remember, just bring down the 2y squared. Bring down the 3x squared. Instead of negative x, we're going to say plus 9x minus 10x. And it doesn't matter which order you put it in, okay? So those two factors, just add the x behind them and they replace b. Keep a and c. Okay? This you can continue ignoring. You just don't want to completely forget it when you're typing in your answer, okay? Now, there's no common factors to all of this, so we're going to factor by grouping. 3x squared plus 9x. I can factor out 1x, and I can factor out a 3, right? So 2y squared times 3x. 3x squared divided by 3x leaves me with an x. 9x divided by 3x leaves me with a positive 3. That's a negative sign, okay? So make sure you're carrying it straight down. 10x and negative 30. Sorry, negative 10x and negative 30. I can divide them both by 10, but it's a negative 10 because I already brought that down. So negative 10x divided by negative 10 is just an x. Negative 30 divided by negative 10 is just a plus 3. If you keep that sign the same, you should be able to pull out a binomial with the same sign, okay? Because if you forget to move that negative, you'll just put positive 10, and you'll have a negative x, negative 3, and that won't perfectly match that. So that's just a problem you want to avoid. A small extra step you want to avoid. So we have x plus 3 times 3x minus 10. All of this times the 2y squared. Okay? Again, you can go backwards, make sure that that all multiplies out to that answer. See if we can get through 4 examples in 12 minutes. Means I have 3 minutes per example. All right. 8x squared minus 14x plus 5. Multiply to equal a times c, right? What's a times c? 8 times 5. Sorry, equals positive 45, right? 45 would be 9. So we need it to multiply to equal 40, and we need it to add to equal negative 14. If you think about it, and you think about the factors of 40, right? This is positive, this is negative, so they're both going to be negative. I know it's negative 10 and negative 4, right? 10 and 4, when they're added, give me 14. When they're multiplied, give me 40. If it didn't come that fast, just make a list. There's no shame. You've seen me multiply very small numbers on my calculator, right? Instead of the negative 14x, I'm going to call it a negative 10x and a negative 4x. Okay, but I'm keeping that 5, that c, right there. There are no common factors, so I'm going to, that's clear, it doesn't convey the right information. All right, 8x squared minus 10x. You can divide it by 2x, right? So if I take that 2x out of 8x squared, I get 4x. If I take that 2x out of negative 10x, I get negative 5, right? Because 8x squared divided by 2x is 4x. Negative 10x divided by 2 is a negative 5. Remember that minus sign should just be moved straight down. Now I have 4x and 5. There's nothing. I just put a 1. There's nothing wrong with that, okay? Negative 4x divided by negative 1 is a positive 4x now. Positive 5 divided by negative 1 is a negative 5, okay? Because, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't write it as a negative there. Because I carried that negative sign, I have to call that a negative 1. Negative 4 by negative 1 is a positive 4, but positive 5 by negative 1 is a negative 5, okay? Make sure all you're looking for is that these are the same. So that now it is 4x minus 5 times 2x minus 1. Good. Let's do it again. Remember, you can always greatest common factor the whole thing. We have a 6, a 2, and a 20. You can divide all of those numbers by the number 2. So I can change this to 2 times 6 divided by 2 is 3. Negative 2 divided by 2 is a negative 1. Negative 20 divided by 2 is a negative 10. Okay. Now I'm going to multiply to equal 3 times negative 10, which is a negative 30. And I'm going to add those two terms to equal negative 1 again. That means you want 2 terms, one positive and one negative, right? You want 2 terms, one positive and one negative, that multiply to equal 30, add to equal negative 1. We have 1 and 30. We have 2 and 15. We have 3 and 10. We have 5 and 6. But one positive, one negative, right? Either negative 1, 30, negative 2, 15, negative 3, 10, negative 5, 6, right? Is there a difference of 1 between any of them? This is 29. This is 13. This is 7, but this is 1, right? If I want it to be a negative 1, I just flip them. Flip the sign, 5 and negative 6, right? 5 times negative 6 is still going to give me negative 30. 5 plus negative 6 is going to give me that negative 1 I want. So we keep the 2 on the outside. We keep the 3x squared. We keep the negative 10. Close the parentheses. That negative x becomes positive 5x minus 6x. Or if you see that the 5 goes with the 10 and the 3 goes with the 6, that's okay too. Let's look at 3x squared plus 5x. What can I divide them both by? I think it's just the letter x. So 3x squared divided by x is going to be 3x. 5x divided by x is just 5. Then we have our negative 6x minus 10. That means if that's a negative, I'm going to be dividing by a negative. 6x and 10 is a negative 2, right? Because negative 6x divided by negative 2 is a negative 3x. Negative 10 divided by negative 2. Oh, sorry. Positive 3x. Negative divided by negative is a positive. Negative divided by negative is a positive. So what we have is 3x plus 5 times x minus 2 times 2, because we took out that 2 at the beginning. Good. All right. 2x squared plus 9x plus 4 multiply to equal a times c. So it should multiply to equal 2 times 4. So it should multiply to equal 8, add to equal positive 9. Those are both positive, so we're only going to look at the positive factors of 8. 1 and 8, or 2 and 4. All right. Which ones add to 9? 1 plus 8 equals 9, right? So now I have 2x squared. That 9x becomes just an x and an 8x, okay? X and 8x add to 9x, but now I can factor by grouping. 2x squared and x. I can factor out an x, so it becomes x times 2x plus 1. Now I have a plus 8x plus 4, so that's going to be a positive. 8x and 4, I can factor out a 4. 8x divided by 4 is just 2x. 4 divided by 4 is just 1. Two x plus 1, x plus 4. Good. All right, guys, we did it. This is very difficult. You should be proud. Check for greatest common factor. 8, 10, and 3. There's no greatest common factor. Multiply to equal a times c. Add to equal b. A is 8. C is negative 3. 8 times a negative 3 is a negative 24, right? So we have a positive 10, negative 24. If it's multiplying to get a negative, but adding to get a positive, that means I need one positive, one negative factor of 24, right? Now I have 3 minutes. So I have, if it's a positive 10, I want my smaller number to be negative. So negative 1, positive 24 is going to get me a 23, right? Negative 2, positive 12 is going to get me a 10. Oh. Sometimes you just find it, right? Negative 3, positive 8 is going to give me 5, right? We can keep going. Negative 4, positive 6 is going to give me a 2. So keep the 8x squared, keep the negative 3, but make that positive 10x into a negative 4x. Oh, sorry. Negative 2x. I went too far and confused myself. Negative 2x and a positive 12x. Good? All right, factoring by grouping. 8x squared minus 2x, I can factor out an x, and I can factor out a 2. Okay, this is a positive, so never make this one a negative, even if that term's a negative. So I have 2x, 8x squared divided by 2x, 8 divided by 2 is 4, x squared divided by x is x, negative 2x divided by 2x is just a negative 1, plus 12x minus 3, so that's going to be a positive. 12x and 3, I can divide by 3. 12x divided by 3 is 4. Oops, sorry, I forgot to put that 3 down. When I divide them, I get 4x. When I divide those, I get negative 1. It's a common factor. 4x minus 1, and then 2x plus 3. If you multiply the back out, you should get back to your original answer. All right.